Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again from Film Fanatic headquarters. Feels good to be back. This is the first video I've done in over a week. I was uh, I was away on tour with a band that I just started playing with this past winter, Osmia. Everything went really well. I'm a huge fan of their music. I'm gonna probably do a show pretty soon about just talking about the tour and the band and this the whole experience. It was all everything kind of happened fast, and it was a whole new project to kind of get involved in. So it was really great. So I think I'm going to do a show coming up about the whole experience and all of these things. So stay tuned for that. So today's show, I'm getting back to doing some movie reviews. This is a movie I did cover before, but this movie is just such an incredible experience that it needs to be. This movie just needs to be talked about more. I don't think. Uh, maybe I've seen. I think I've seen maybe one or two, or probably one video where this film was covered, and I think it was. There's a couple of guys that I watch on YouTube that really specialize in the world of exploitation. And again, that's my favorite genre. I love all genres, but that's my well of inspiration. And I just get so much enjoyment out of it. This movie was either covered by, I think I heard about this film and also this director who has become one of my favorite directors. Just amazing. Probably one of the most prolific directors I have ever come across. And that was I'd say I got turned on to this director probably about 4 years ago now, which is crazy. But there's two YouTube guys that I watch a lot, and they are specialists when it comes to the world of exploitation. And that is Mood616, who is a Canadian YouTube dude who is just amazing. He covers all kinds of movies, but he really takes this a serious deep dive in the world of exploitation. And I've learned, a lot about this genre. I've gotten turned on to so many directors and films, and it's helped bring me back to a lot of these movies that I saw when I was a kid, and now that with the golden age of physical media that we are living in, I have, bought a lot of those movies I grew up watching, and then also discovered lots of other films, which has just been incredible. And 42nd Street Forever is another YouTube guy who is a British YouTube dude who is just incredible. He is probably the best guy that I've seen on YouTube as far as covering and taking. It's like taking a cinema class or a film class when it comes to the world of exploitation. He's a British UK guy, just amazing. So today's movie is on. It's a film by Jess Franco, who is a director. Again, I discovered about 4 years ago, and that was definitely through Moods 616's YouTube channel. This movie that I'm going to cover today, I did a show on this, I think about maybe 2 years ago or so, but it's such a damn good movie that I feel like this movie, and I also heard this movie, I think this movie came up, I'm not positive, but I definitely discovered Jess Franco. I actually saw a few of his movies back when I was a kid. They were on, back when I grew up in the 80s. There was these, there were different series, basically late night horror shows or marathon shows that would come on, like, say, Friday or Saturday night. It would start at like 9 o'clock and go to like midnight, or start at 11 o'clock and go to like 2. And they would usually show sometimes 3, 4 movies back to back, and it was on cable. But they would always show horror movies, and most of them would end up being these really low budget, kind of grimy, sleazy horror films. And I remember the first Jess Franco movie I ever saw as a kid, and I remember it really scared. It scared me, but it grossed me the fuck out. And that was a film called Facelift, which I have on Blu-ray, and I'm gonna revisit that pretty soon. And but at the time, again, I was like, well, probably, in looking back, in hindsight, probably I was probably too young to see a movie that was so graphic and kind of fucked up. Um, but at that time, I was 8 or 9 years old, and so I didn't know who like Jess Franco was. But I saw that film I remember as a kid, and I think I've seen a couple of his other films, but I did not know, didn't put two and two together. And thanks to a lot of these YouTube channels, especially Mood 616 and 42nd Street Forever, I was like, oh, that's a Jess Franco movie. And then I bought 3 or 4 years ago, I bought Facelift on Blu-ray, and it's a masterpiece. And after putting one and one together, or two and two together, I was like, oh, this is Jess Franco. Okay, and he was a really incredibly, well, probably the most prolific director I've ever come across. Like, it's insane. I mean, you're talking over 100 movies. He was a Spanish director, and he was in the world of exploitation. He he made movies, I believe, that like dated back from like the 60s, 70s, and way up to the 80s, and I think even into the 90s. Might have even had a couple of films in the 50s. But he did, all of his movies were like pretty much low down and dirty, sleazy exploitation movies. But he jumped all, as far as genre films is concerned, he covered all of them basically. I mean, he wasn't just, he's probably more well known for his like giallo films or some of his horror films, but he made all kinds of, I mean, you name a genre, like a war film or a western, or a sex exploitation movie, or a pure giallo film. He did it all, really. I mean, and I think he even did some like comedies. And I I've gotten quite a few of his movies on Blu-ray, and he's like, since I identified him as who he is, and I've taken that deep dive, I've really have totally fallen in love with him, with his work, but then also his films. And this film today is easily one of the best, and that is Lorna the Exorcist. I covered this movie probably a couple of years ago, I believe, and I watched this again. But again, I think this movie is so incredible that it needs to be talked about. Lorna the Exorcist. It came out in 1974, and this movie is one of the most bizarre cinematic experiences that you'll ever have. It's super creepy. It's one of the sleaziest movies. Jess Franco had, well, kind of a reputation that, when it comes to the world of exploitation, he really loved to put it, to just put it out there, pun intended. He loved women's vaginas. So a lot of his films, when it came to like the sexual aspect of it, showed women's vaginas. So, so his films were notoriously incredibly sleazy. This movie is just incredibly sleazy. I almost say I almost consider this movie to be a porn, because there is a scene where more or less there is kind of penetration. There are there's all kinds of fantastical and bizarro lesbian sex scenes in this movie, And it's such a haunting movie, and it's so bizarre. It's so strange. It's really creepy. It's so incredibly atmospheric. And the story of this film is basically about this guy who meets this really mysterious woman who he ends up having this affair, and he is at this the main character, this guy is at this casino, and he's gambling, and he meets this really mysterious, very sensual, very beautiful woman, and he ends up having an affair with her. And while they are participating in all kinds of sexual, sexual activities, if you will, she basically says that if he swears his allegiance to her, he will have all the wealth in the world, and that he will have all the money that he wants. He will have all of that fame. But the catch is if his first daughter, she has to be able to basically pass on her magical power. She basically, in return for him swearing allegiance to Lorna, who is this woman, who we later find out is this witch. She creates this pact that for his riches, he must give up his daughter to her to be for her to more or less carry on and carry on her magical power, or to um, as a payment. And it's that classic story of kind of a pact with the devil. And this film has very much it's got like an occult element. I mean, the main character, this woman, is a witch, and you later, as the film develops, you realize that's what this is. And she is kind of this embodiment of evil, and she is going to, in order to get, she's going to, get this daughter for this pact, this guy's daughter, and she's going to like basically transmit her power into this daughter, and she will like carry on. And it's wild. I mean, it's the opening sequence to this movie is so erotic and so sleazy, but it's haunting. And this movie is, I don't know, it's such a, it's hard to describe. Lorna the Exorcist is really, I almost don't even consider it a movie. It's just like an experience. I mean, it's super trippy, very psychedelia, very psychedelic. It's very erotic, and again, it is. I would almost consider this movie to be a porn in a lot of ways, because usually you have a lot of films out there that have just in general films that movies that have sex scenes, and then there are a lot of films in the B movie world or exploitation world where they're kind of considered more or less softcore porn, or where they'll show private parts and full nudity and all of these things, but they usually what separates soft porn or soft core porn to hardcore porn is penetration. And there are scenes in this movie where there is penetration, so I feel like it's kind of a porn. But again, it's such a trippy movie. It's so beautifully shot. Um, it's that classic story of one, of a person yearning for power, and is willing to do anything to attain that power. That classic, was it like the classic Faust story of selling your soul? It very much plays on that, and it's got elements of witchcraft, deep and hardcore eroticism. It's super sleazy. It's very, very strange, very bizarre. It's one of the most bizarre films. And there are things in this film of where it's just kind of shocking, and you're not sure how you should react to it. And I think because it has those elements, it is I don't know. I almost don't feel like it's a movie per se because it feels like it's an experience. It's got such incredible atmosphere. The music in this movie is so haunting, and that's the thing that's so unique about this movie is throughout the whole, as the story develops, and there's a lot of sequences over where you're not sure how you should react, if you should be turned on or repulsed or scared or yeah, it's a very and it's got this very melancholy kind of dark sadness that kind of runs throughout this film. It's such a bizarre juxtaposition of all of these different emotions. It's an incredible film. This Blu-ray, I mean, I don't know, like Jess Franco is just an amazing director, but this movie is just yeah, it's a fucking wild ride, and I can't recommend this movie enough. This Blu-ray that I got a few years ago, oh my god, it's incredible. It's packed with special features. You know the, it's got a few hours of special features on here. That's just really really great. They take a real serious deep dive. There's some interviews I believe with some film historians and people who worked on the film. And again, it's mind-boggling that this came out in '74 because this movie is a fucking trip. I and again, and it's very slow. It's a slow burn film, but it's like that classic Faustian, selling your soul, to the devil, if you will, in order to attain all the riches of the world and what that can cost you. It's kind of that kind of a vibe, or that's basically what the story is. And we've seen that, that classic, I guess you want to call it cautionary tale in films before, and that theme has been explored a lot before. And it does that with this film, but in such a bizarre way that, yeah. And again, it's kind of a thriller. It's got lots of different elements. I mean, I consider this movie to be a horror film, but it's got lots of different elements. I mean, it's very slow. It's very mysterious. It's very surreal. Very strange. It's a drama. It's a horror film. It has elements of witchcraft or black magic. I also think it has elements of where it feels like it could be almost interpreted, or could be like a vampire film where it has vampire elements. Just amazing. A giallo. It's got a little bit of a giallo thing. The ending for this film is incredibly disturbing and shocking. And again, it you just have. I remember when I watched this. I watched this film about a week ago, and I just like had these like incredibly strong reactions to this film, and I wasn't sure like, wow, I don't know how I should feel. I thought the film and the experience of watching Lorna the Exorcist was so intense and amazing, but at the same time I was like, I'm not sure how I should feel or react. It's an experience. Can't recommend this movie enough. Can't talk about this movie enough. It's one of the best Jess Franco movies of all time. Amazing. Lorna the Exorcist. Definitely check this shit out. Thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.